My name is Lana Peterson. I'm with the National Youth Leadership Council. And one of my awesome duties is to be able to work with service learning coordinators and teachers from around the country. And one thing that we saw that was a missing link in this conference, in conferences in the past, is really just more sessions focused for service learning coordinators, because oftentimes a service learning coordinator is who attends this conference, and they're often working in isolation. So if we can get people networking as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Rogers Bascom. I'm the Service Learning Coordinator for Edina Public Schools. Edina is a public school district just outside Minneapolis. Our students, we probably have about 8,500 students in our district, so we're small. We've been doing service learning. I would say we have a long history of service in our community, but we are trying to morph that. And while I've been there for 9 years, we still have many rivers to cross. I'm thrilled to be here at the Service Learning Conference because it's a time where I can be with my people, with the people who understand service learning or who are understanding service learning, because I certainly look at the GSN network, and if you haven't gone on the GSN network, you must, because there is so much information. I read that, all the information and the articles and the suggestions, and I get filled again. I'm happy to be here talking with you, and I look forward to more conversation.
Good afternoon. My name is Ginny Luce, and I direct the service learning program at an independent boys' school outside of Philadelphia. I am a one-woman shop. I direct the program for students junior kindergarten through 12th grade. Our lower school is 100% service learning integrated. Our middle school is about maybe 60%, and our upper school maybe about 50%. In the upper school, we have a lot of more opportunities for community service projects that are run by students and so on. It's been a marvelous challenge. I was in a workshop earlier today, and they were asking for people who were, in essence, kind of newbies or seasons or gurus, and I said, yes, I'm one of all of the above. I'm excited for this opportunity because I have found over the years, being a one-person shop, that a lot of times you are kind of standing there alone, and networking has been so amazing for me at these sessions and then continued relationships on. And I'm very excited to share what knowledge I have and have you share the questions and knowledge that you have as we all work heartily to strengthen our programs.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Foster, and I'm with Guilford County Schools in Greensboro, North Carolina. I serve as the Character Development and Service Learning Coordinator for the school district K-12. We have about 128 schools in our district, and the amazing thing is that we have our superintendent, Maurice Green, who is for and very pro character development and service learning. And so with that, we established a character development initiative about 4 or 5 years ago under the direction of Brenda Elliott, who is the Executive Director for Student Services as well as the Project Manager for the Character Development Initiative. And with that, we have a team of three coaches. We have 3 character development coaches, 1 character development coach for the elementary school level, 1 for middle school level, and 1 for high school as well, with 2 office supports. So I'm excited to be here and ready to work together and network and see how we can continue to create sustainability within service learning in our schools.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Blankemeyer. I'm the director of the Mayerson Foundation High School Service Learning Program in Cincinnati, Ohio. And yes, you heard that right. It's just for high schools in Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky. We service anywhere from about 120 to 130 high schools in our region. And I'm curious in the room if there are, could you raise your hands? Are you representing a high school? Okay, and do your high schools have required service hours? Yes, so my charge for the last 6 years, and then the programs for the last 20, has been to reduce barriers to quality service learning and thinking beyond the timestamp of the required service hours. So that's a little bit about the lens that I'm coming from today, and I'm so excited to hear what other expertise is in the room too. So I'm hoping this can also be an exchange of what you find working in your schools as well.
Awesome. So now we're going to move into our first theme of the day, professional development. I think maybe the first question, and this kind of goes along with it, but really, how do you structure professional development and trainings within your district and position? And along with this, a question, what's the most efficient and effective strategies for professional development? Anyone can start.
I will start. I am actually going to be facilitating this roundtable in this room after we get through the panel session. So, and I can get more into it if you're interested in that particular piece of the pieces being offered. But the way I structure professional development is one, by acknowledging that there is a variety of schools that we are servicing. And like Ginny said, I'm a one-woman show, and that has its pros and its cons. I can tell you when I'm walking into a school what the socioeconomic status background is, what the culture of the teachers and the students is. I might even be able to tell you the resistance or acceptance level of service learning. So with that being said, I do not have a stock presentation that I bring into a school. I do not have a stock presentation that I share with service learning coordinators in the school. I have a menu of options that basically breaks down the most successful YouTube videos, handouts, copyable materials, and you'll note, for me at least, that I do not believe in recreating the wheel. I will nod to and use the original formatting from Generation On, the National Youth Leadership Council, GSN, whoever created it, because I want my teachers, my administrators to know that there is a whole network of people out there doing this, and I am not the only crazy person cheerleading it in Cincinnati, Ohio. So the menu we offer ranges from why youth service and a little bit of Steve Culbertson's mantra, if you will, into the IPARD model, into quality service learning and what that looks like, and even offers some opportunities for deeper reflection using Kathy Berger Kay's models, as well as just research-driven presentations. I've had teachers and principals say, we just want a presentation that showcases the research that's out there. We need to convince our faculty and staff with research-based practices. We don't want examples, we just want you to share that. So I think by offering that approach to professional development is meeting a school where they're at and meeting teachers where they're at, and not using a stock presentation. So I can get more into that if there's questions, but I'll turn it over to the panel.
One of the things that we have done, when I first started, as I said, we have a long history of community service. So those were the people that I would target. And I think a lot of what we do as coordinators, I think we do a lot of sales. I think we're always selling why this is a good thing for kids, why it's a good thing for communities, why it's a good thing for teachers. So that's really, I guess this is my path to where we are today. I started meeting with a lot of teachers one-on-one, how to take their community service project and lift it maybe a little bit this way. We then went to a PLC, a professional learning community, where we spent the whole year, a group of 30 people representing all 9 schools, where we spent a lot of time going through some of the literature, examining some of the important standards of high quality service, the service learning cycle. We also, and I think this was one of the most effective things we did for professional development, is we actually go and do service together. Just 2 weeks ago, we took a group of teachers and we went to a food bank. And we did service, we learned about the organization, and we really walked through what that would mean if you were going through all 5 steps of the service learning cycle. That was really helpful because then they could go back to their schools and get people excited. From there, we went to have a service learning leadership team for the district. So there were people represented from each school on this service learning team. From there, I mean, for us, I had to get some plants. I had to get some of those spies in those schools that would kind of stir things up a little bit and get excited about it. And they could say, see, this is what we did, and this is why we're doing it, to get other people on board. Now we're actually, from there, we went to some workshop weeks, or during workshop weeks before school, we did a lot of those Service Learning 101, not to overload, because I think, as you'll find at the end of the conference, there's so much information. There's so much you can learn. So introducing little by little. I know that there are some districts who have been able to with a full-blown service learning experience from start to finish. We just haven't been as successful with that. On a couple of different occasions we are able to do that. But for me, what I've seen, if it's sustainable and if something still continues, it's that slow progression.
We offer in Guilford County, excuse me, summer service learning institutes for teachers K-12. And during this summer, our hope is to train at least one teacher within the 128 schools across the district. And so we've been doing that for the past 4 years now. And so with that opportunity, we go through the basics of service learning and how to really infuse it into the curriculum and the curriculum connections, which we feel like is really prominent when you're talking about using service learning as an instructional strategy, obviously. And then moving into community partner opportunities. So we bring in community partners so that the teachers are also able to see what are some needs within the community, and then they have a working opportunity to bridge those two together. And as mentioned before, we use a lot of Kathy Berger-Kay, her work, and tying together, the different curriculum connections to particular themed issues during that training. And then throughout the school year, we provide teach and learn trainings that focus on specific areas. And so, throughout this past school year, we looked at the achievement gap, and we've looked at assessment and evaluations, as well as technology integration with service learning as well. So we really try to continue on throughout the year to make sure that we're able to provide support in our district to those teachers that are engaged in service learning and having the opportunity to share. That's one thing we're often hearing is that a lot of educators are appreciating the opportunity to hear what others are doing in the school district. So of course you're not having to reinvent the wheel, but you're able to share those very powerful and successful stories of how service learning is being integrated into the classroom. Another opportunity that we do during the summer is with our leadership. So within our school district, we have the administrative central office staff who are also engaged in service learning during their Leaders Institute every summer. And so this past summer was our second year of allowing them an opportunity to engage in a service learning opportunity within the community where they were able to select one day, and they were led through this one day and facilitated by a teacher that has been trained in service learning, in which we call service learning teacher leaders. And so the service learning teacher leader was able to facilitate this day with leaders within our school district. So, we're looking at how do we really allow the leaders who are supporting service learning, how do we help them to understand what it truly looks like on the ground level? And so that's a great opportunity that we offer as well in our school district.
What they said. Actually, I am a Pennsylvania certified service learning trainer for teachers now. And so my opportunities for professional development, teachers start to come to me now because they can get Act 48 credit for doing our workshops. But we've had professional development days. We don't have them every year. We alternate them with, as you were saying, we have service days. And what we do is we mix up people from the different disciplines and the different grade levels. We're junior K through 12. I look at where everybody is and put together groups of people that I see possibilities for collaboration with. And then I identify several different projects they can do. Some of them are environmental, some of them are with hunger, some of them are social justice. I mean, there's a variety of them that they can do and so on, but I put them on a day of service together so that they can experience see what the service experience is for their students, and they can get a sense about so much of what they're already doing, are concrete pieces of what service learning is, but to let them have a sense of collaboration and so on. We also have a program where twice a semester We have Wednesday morning programs, which are little mini sessions that teachers from each of the different disciplines put on and for other teachers. And so what I've been able to do with that is we've been able to do, I've had teachers who have done integrated service learning into their classrooms and so on, and they co-run sessions with me each time. So when they're hearing from their colleagues and so on, it's a different level for them. And I don't want to repeat what everyone else is, has said, but much of what we do is similar. I always say that professional development really starts at the lunch table, because a lot of times we'll just sit down and say, what are you doing, or what are you working on, and so on. And I'm an adult with ADD, and like I talk and I can't shut up kind of thing. So we see opportunities and just kind of jump on them.
I have a question for you all. Do you ever bring in service learning experts to have another voice?
Well, with the trainings that we've established in our school district, actually NYLC has been a huge part of that. They've come to support us in our work and helped to actually lead the first couple of few trainings that we've offered to our teachers during this summer, and as well as the trainings that we've offered to our youth. And so I know that we're focusing on PD, but they've definitely they've had a lot of support in our work, and so through that they created some structures for us. And so with that, we've been able to, of course, train our teachers, who are then able to come back and do training as well. So it's almost like that evolution effect of being able to learn, gain knowledge, and kind of pass it on through the different levels.
Even though I work for a family foundation, do not think I have unlimited funds. So the concept of expert in Cincinnati has really been limited just based on funding and who we're able to bring in. So the long and the short of it is no for me. With that being said, and I don't know if you have this same sort of permeating feeling about PD or professional development in your schools, but it's like a dirty four-letter word in Ohio. And if you look at CBK's, 10 efficient practices for service learning professional development, one of it is refreshing. And although, I'd like to think everyone in this room is an expert in your own regard in knowing your school culture, part of professional development success in our schools is being refreshing and admitting that most of the people in the room don't want to be there. And that's hard to say out loud, but it's real. And so when we can tap into the curiosity and passion quotient of those teachers in the room, and we can start there, I feel like then we're able to start building something. So, no to the expert question.
A question we got for PD, is there a way to do PD that allows teachers to experience the process firsthand? I think Julie touched on this with the food bank, but is there any other ideas that you have for this?
Just to kind of really back up with what she said, I know we have some schools in our district that have had in-house trainings at the beginning of the school year where the staff went into investigating and understanding and learning more about a community agency, and then they went out to provide service and really coming back to bring all of that together with their particular content areas to identify how can I infuse this into my classroom. And I think that's one of the best ways to do it, because it is very hands-on. It becomes very relative to what the teachers are doing, and they're actually able to connect and see it for themselves prior to the students getting in there. So I think anytime you have an opportunity to engage, teachers in those opportunities prior to school starting and having a solid foundation, that would really strengthen the work as they go throughout the school year.
I think another day that we went to City Hall, which is where our fire department, our police department, the senior center, we had a panel of about 8 different people that came in and talked to 10 or 15 teachers. So we were able to build those partnerships right then and there. And the police department could say, yes, we're having a problem with people jaywalking. How can your 5th grade students address that issue? And the fire department could say, well, in 4th grade, we work with a lot of safety. And the 4th grade teacher would go, well, we don't do anything with safety in our curriculum. Now we can, because we've had this conversation. So it's a fun, I think when you talked about Claire refreshing, that's a really fun thing to do. And if you are limited of not being able to go to your city hall or to your police department, they love coming up to a school and talking to teachers.
To expound upon that, whenever I do professional development, I always bring a nonprofit partner with me.
Yeah.
Every single time. And Laura, who I met this morning, who's out there, said that she started her professional development trainings just throwing out a rhetorical or a hypothetical question, how do you solve a problem? And letting teachers develop what process they would go through to solve that problem. Very similarly, when I start professional development with teachers, I let the nonprofit state whatever issue or cause or thing that they're proposing to the teachers for the day, and asking the teachers to look at that issue from the lens of their classroom, whether it be science, technology, engineering, math, English, you name it. Yes, the football coach too. I make sure I try to engage every single person in that room to think about who that nonprofit partner is there for the day. And so if you're wondering, where do you come up with a nonprofit partner? We recruit through our local DOVIA, our directors of volunteers and agencies. Every time there's a new professional development opportunity, we have more than enough nonprofit partners who also want to learn and how to break down the wall between the nonprofit and the school anyhow, so they're more than willing to come.
One of the things that we have done in the past is we do a year-long hunger program. So I'll invite a representative, they can choose amongst them from every single grade level, and we will literally do a brainstorming session. What we want to do is we want to walk the theme of hunger and poverty and homelessness through across the curriculum, from junior kindergarten through 12th grade, and just kind of find out what are some of the things that they're doing, and literally brainstorm collaboratively, as a group. What are some of, we identify what the issues are. We already have many partners, community-based organizations and so on to work with, but have them help to brainstorm with each other some possibilities for service learning, literally that's in their curriculum, and we are able to take that theme and walk it across the curriculum, junior kindergarten through 12th grade in every discipline. And part of it is, when you're sitting down with groups of teachers, is helping them realize that some of what they're doing already is service learning. They might be missing one component or one element of it, and that's reaffirming to them that they can close the circle, the cycle, and they're pleased with themselves because they're saying, or because service learning really is a push in. So many people view it as a pull out and something extra. So when we're able to do that, and they can be part of the process, that really helps us all in terms of professional development. And then we train each other.
Any other questions from out in the audience on specifically professional development? Yeah.
Any techniques you recommend for introducing people to service learning in an hour or less?
I'm going to repeat that just so we get it. Any techniques that you have for introducing people to service learning in an hour or less?
We do.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
Julie.
Claire.
We do introductory overall definition difference between volunteerism, community service, service learning, and then we do make it, take it training within that hour. So when we're limited to 45 minutes to 60 minutes, the make it, take it allows for a follow-up point to get deeper. So that's our strategy. If they haven't finished the make it, take it by the end of that particular 60 minutes, it's also a great way to follow up and say, let's get through that make it, take it and the whole IPARD process. Sure. So we have a series of questions that we offer to a teacher that's not just a blank rubric that says IPARD. It does not just say that. It actually asks concrete questions about the 4 C's, concrete questions for backwards planning about what your curriculum goals would be at the end of this, at the completion of this particular service learning experience, not project, but experience. And that's the way we work backwards. And so by the time they finish that 3-page document, that's the goal at the end, is that we can follow up and then dig deeper. I find that providing a blank rubric with 5 letters on it, it does not get anywhere with my teachers.
And I would just add stories. Tell those stories. Tell about the Freddies of your world that weren't engaged until you had him talking to the custodians because there was too much salt on the sidewalks. Those kind of stories are really, that's how you grab people.
One of the things I wanted to say about the hour or less, frequently we will have faculty, we love it when faculty have collaborated on a project, but they will present at a faculty meeting, and oftentimes we have students be part of that presentation. And you know, it's interesting when you talk to people about youth voice. It sounds pretty simple, but a lot of people don't get it, the power of youth voice and so on. But when they come, and as you're saying, when they tell their story, they tell about the impact. You know, the view from where they stand, they don't have all of our filters and so on. So the view from where they stand adds a level of authenticity that you almost like can't teach, because it's an internal experience and so on. So I would say whenever you have an opportunity that you can have young people to discuss what their experience was, that, you know, teachers seeing that impact is very powerful. And also, if you're talking about issues, you know, if you're doing a health program or a health fair or something like that, when we do a program on cancer, and we start at our assembly by asking people to raise their hand if they know anybody who has, you know, had cancer and so on. And then we just tell everyone to keep their hands up and to turn around and look at the people behind them. And, you know, a lot of times there are issues and we feel like we're isolated in the world. And when you look around and you see how many people are, you know, dealing with what those issues are, and so on, I think that when you give people, you don't want to give them too much information, but when you give them more information, then it goes beyond the blah, 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 and so on. So I think that you're probably doing yourself and them a real service, because as you're saying, it can trigger conversations that might otherwise not even happen.
I'm going to move to the networking portion of the questions, and just kind of say service learning educators are often working, and service learning coordinators are working in isolation within their school and their district. How do you bring like-minded educators together to network and meet?
One of the things that we started about 8 years ago in collaboration with with an independent school, and you from Minneapolis to the Catholic school back there, we need to get you on this list, because what we do is we host a gathering of service and service learning leaders just to come together for a dinner, for a time to have a conversation. We'll spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Actually, we'll spend sometimes a half an hour just going around the circle, introducing ourselves, what we're working on. Then you can figure out who you want to sit next to during lunch or during dinner. We usually have a 20 or 25-minute presentation from a community partner. It's not necessarily a time where we pump our own program, but we've had several times NYLC will come and talk to us about what's new and innovative, what they're doing. We might have a group that does work with families with regard to service come and talk. But it's grown into a really important part of our networking, because it is an isolating position. I don't have a job alike, and this allows me to call up my friend Nan and say, you know, this is just what I did. I don't know what I should do next. And she might have done 3 or 4 things that are very similar. Or I can call Lana and say, I don't know how to get to the lift. So that's what we have been doing. We've been doing that for about 8 years, and people really seem to, it's an easy thing to do. I just invited you to dinner. Make sure I get your card.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it is a good dinner. It's a good dinner.
In Pennsylvania, we have, it's called the PAIS, the Pennsylvania Association of Independent Schools. And I am fortunate in that my position is a full-time position, and that I get to work with all grade levels, and a lot of people as service learning coordinators are doing that in addition to other things. So frequently I will have, there will be people who are teaching a couple of classes, and then they're doing service learning. Or they're coaching and they're doing the musicals and they're doing service learning, and so on. So when I feel like I'm isolated, they're trying to juggle a lot of things and be effective in what they're doing. So what has happened with our PAIS is we actually now have a service roundtable group, and we meet a couple of times a year, and now we're doing workshops together and so on. And a lot of the time is, we're kind of talking about what we're doing, but a lot of the time really is brainstorming with each other. My charge in my job was all about integrating service learning, so I never started my job as a community service, coordinator, liaison, and so on. I was charged with making sure that we integrated service into the curriculum in the classroom, and so on. So many of the independent schools that in Pennsylvania that I have experience with haven't had that. So they're moving towards that. They're moving more towards service learning, more away from community service and so on. And so for them to look at, well, this is what we do, how can we turn that into service learning? And so on. And so we, collectively as a group, we talk about ways, we brainstorm solutions, and we're, in my office, we call it the Service Learning Resource and Volunteer Center. And I am always looking for resources. And so I bring resources into my office all the time, and I share them with people not only in Pennsylvania, but through the Service Learning listserv and so on. I'll just let people know what we have, and I send that out to faculty, actually, a couple of times a year, saying, new in the Resource Center, and so on. And as far as networking, really, if you're passionate about it, you're networking all the time.
Well, during our teach and learns that we offer throughout the school year, that's an opportunity where educators are able to come together and share project ideas. And our character development coaches, since they're hands-on in the schools, they're able to identify specific service learning experiences that are happening on each level, and invite them out to co-present with us during our teach and learns, which happen either after school or during a half day for the staff. And so those are opportunities that we have where we have refreshments and that kind of thing, share project ideas, the presentations, and just opportunities to support those who may have ideas and and possibly would like to go further but may not know how. And so this is an opportunity for those creative ideas to come alive. And so we do offer that for our educators as well. And just thinking about celebrations, I think that's oftentimes forgotten about as well. So we go through these service learning experiences, but then there's this opportunity to celebrate. And during that celebration time, which we have a celebration of character, which we host for the second year. But with that, it's an opportunity again to showcase particular projects that may have occurred throughout the school year, but bringing everyone all together. We publish monthly newsletters that highlight particular service learning projects that may be happening or character development opportunities within our schools. And so from that, that is also yet another opportunity to share those ideas. But then from those articles that are published within that newsletter, we pull some of that out to figure out, what are some really high quality projects that can be celebrated towards the end of the year, where we can come together and collaborate as well. So those are just a couple of the ways that we allow our educators to kind of come together to meet and greet.
Working in a variety of high schools, I typically have 1 to 2 liaisons in each of the high schools in our region. And we bring them together in 2 ways. At the beginning of the year, we have a workshop in which those liaisons and/or a teacher sponsor from a school can bring 6 to 8 students to a workshop, sharing best practices in community engagement, service learning, and volunteerism. And we pull the teachers aside, which might be against best practices, but we do pull the teachers aside, and we do a speed networking, speed dating sort of experience where on the one side of the table is a community partner. For 2 minutes, that community partner can share what they're trying to do in the community. And for 1 minute, those 5 teachers across from that community partner can say how they could see their class, their club, their group of students addressing that community issue. We really believe strongly in the reciprocal community service and service learning relationship, if you can't tell by my infusion of community partners with teachers. And that allows not just the connection and networking to the community partner, but also to the other teachers and what ideas they might have. So every 3 minutes they're rotating and everyone's exhausted after 60 minutes. So that's a really fun, engaging way that we're sharing. And then at the end of the year, we do host a teacher and school celebration. And we don't recognize one school over another. It is regional, so all 120 schools are invited, 2 to 3 faculty representatives from each school. That's sponsored through the foundation and corporate sponsors. But what we are able to do is just share what were your aha moments from the year, and it's a year in reflection. And by framing it that way, by not saying this school's doing better than this school, everyone's dealt a different hand when it comes to resources. We're able to really, really level the playing field between teachers and get great ideas flowing, whether you are a suburban school, an urban school, a private school, a rural school. So that's our way of networking on the front end of the academic year and on the back end.
I'd like to also add that GSN is great for networking.
I'm loving this workshop. Okay, so I'm going to ask, there's 2 more questions related to networking, just related to this, but maybe just due to time, I'm going to ask maybe one person answer this. How do you maintain meaningful relationships with people who do things that aren't necessarily aligned with your work? Everyone's like, that's fine, someone else can take it.
This sounds trivial, but they stay on our listserv. I have a lot of teachers who engage in community service. And so to continue valuing what they bring into the high school curriculum, they stay on the listserv, they're invited to continue to participate, but they recognize fully well that we are trying to get this back into the curriculum. So even though they haven't quite drank the Kool-Aid, I don't know if that's answering your question, but we still want to keep a relationship because in some schools, for me, that's my only way into that faculty, is through that teacher. So I can't discredit what they're trying to do in a school as not important because it is. It's very important. Any other thoughts?
I just wanted to say that also having, if you help to create an opportunity where someone can work with them so that you're acknowledging what their strength is and so on with what they're trying to do, then if they can collaborate with someone else, then that might be able to bring them into the fold and have both partners feel supported.
And again, if one person wants to answer, what are the best ways to educate community organizations on service learning?
I have to answer this. I'm sorry. If you have a DOVIA in your city, and I guarantee you do, directors of volunteers in agencies, they're most likely a hands-on action center or under Points of Light or connected with one of your United Ways. There is a very strong possibility they offer a 6-course series on volunteer management. We have found a way to wiggle ourselves in there, and so every course that's offered on volunteer management, there's a whole 2-hour section on service learning. If we are not using the same language, this will not succeed. And so I really would like to think in our region that when our nonprofits call a school and say we have this service experience, will it fill your kids' service requirements? It's now getting well beyond that. Schools are understanding that, wow, this need could be met through a science class. And the nonprofits are starting to think creatively. So if you need support in identifying those, go to Points of Light Network or Hands-On Network, which are together now, right? They're one. So all of your hands-on action centers would be listed on there. You can find the primary contact and ask, say, offer your services for free. That's what I've done. I'm like, please let me get in front of your nonprofits. It has been really successful.
So in our planning for this panel, one of the pieces that came out was the importance of quality service learning, but also knowing that service learning coordinators also are always facing the challenge of creating an on-ramp, so encouraging people, but yet pushing people really to improve the quality of their projects. So I'll ask the panel to kind of answer in maybe around 1 minute. How do you balance this with the educators that you work with?
With regard to quality, I start small. I think anybody who wants to tip their toe into the waters of service learning, I will support them, because it's hard when you go through the indicators of high quality service learning. I mean, if you're starting off with a service learning project, that can be overwhelming. So I always start small. And I also, one way, and I think we have maybe talked about this, I might start with an existing service project and say something like, you might consider, and have you thought about, because I don't want to, community service is good and important work, and it's not that we want that to go completely away. We just want to connect it. We're institutions of learning, and so I think the work that we do fits with service learning.
This is a huge challenge because there is a lot of resistance and so on. One of the ways that we have been able to help move some projects forward is by having teachers who are doing service learning to invite others to initially not even participate, but just kind of come and see what it's about, or relating it to students, you know, for, in terms of speaking with teachers and saying, did you know that, you know, Johnny did this, and oh, you should come and see what has happened in terms of the development of his presentation skills, or and so on, and then attach the kind of for the good piece to it in terms of, so a lot of times seeing service learning in action, you know, it is like the, you know, the picture speaks 1,000 words and so on. Again, it's very difficult because, as I said before, service learning is really a push in, and you know, a lot of times it's you know, people feel like they're comfortable and safe with their community service projects and so on. So it's a very difficult process, but you know, and a lot of it has to be kind of done one-on-one. But they have you know, teachers have a lot of regard for many of their colleagues and so on. So as I said, I'm one person, so I can't convince everyone. But it's a challenge that just will go on. So, you know, basically, we have curriculum mapping, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit and so on, so I can kind of look at what people are doing and so on and help them to see the ways in which they can deal with this push-in and have it not feel like it's an extra piece.
One of the ways we encourage high-quality service learning practices are through documentation. And so we've established a teacher documentation form where it helps our educators to kind of go through, and it's really, we prefer it to be like a prior to planning almost. Once you do your lesson plans, you take this teacher documentation form, and you go through those quality standards of practice, the 8 quality standards of practice, as well as IPARD. So there's components of IPARD that are in this documentation form as well. Because the key is to really identify how am I really connecting this curriculum content, excuse me, or even this concept of service to my curriculum. And so that helps us to really see what's happening within our schools, as well as, you know, of course, writing things down, and they're able to actually see what's going on with the projects. And through those teacher documentation forms, our character development coaches support our teachers in identifying easier connections, or in highlighting some of the work that they're already doing to say, okay, this is right on point, or these are some areas of growth or change. We also bring forth the rubrics. You know, we have some really great rubrics that NYLC has as well that help to really look at the spectrum from where you start, and understanding that there's always a starting point, to encourage everyone, even at their very, very beginning stages, that no, you may not tap into all eight standards. However, there are 2 that you're strong in, and really kind of going through that continuum to understand that it's a growth process, and really walking them through how they can increase in other areas within their projects. So I think that's one way that we really try to figure out how to help along the way, and not to, of course, diminish what has already been established as well.
Okay. So if one person wants to answer this question, how do you engage students in the process of coming up with an area of focus? I don't know if that's maybe specifically for a service learning project. So maybe, I don't know Yvonne, you want to share about the student ambassador group?
Yeah, I was thinking about actually when you mentioned that. So we have service learning ambassadors that are high school students, 9 through 12, that we train every summer. And from those students across the 28 high schools, any of those that are interested in going a step further and participating in our service learning youth council, they're able to join those meetings and kind of work along to plan some district-wide service projects throughout the school year. And so I'm just thinking about me and what I did in working with that small group of youth. And last year it was an interesting opportunity to think about what are some particular issues in the community that you all see and how can we address, and really having various ideas that came out at one time. And with my background being in education, me being able to tie in those curriculum connections along the way. So it wasn't just a service project, but they were really engaged in a variety of a huge variety of curriculum and content areas that were tied to their topic, which, we did a voting process and they narrowed it down to a particular like healthy living, healthy issues kind of topic. And so I walk them, I'll facilitate that process with them. But then I also think about, we also host a summer of service, and it's in conjunction with the Volunteer Center of Greensboro in our area. And with that, we have typically 4 different nonprofit organizations, 4 different themed areas where you'll have small groups of middle school or high school students to work directly with a nonprofit agency during the summertime for about 6 to 8 weeks, being led by one of the teachers in our district that have been trained in service learning. And so I was also one of those service learning teacher leaders once before prior to this position, where I work with a small group of youth, and we were connected to Food Assistance, which is a nonprofit organization that focused on providing food to elderly. And so in that process, I was able to really walk the youth. I think a lot of the documentation that we have through, and really honestly through NYLC and YSA publications as well, helped to really narrow down this process for the youth, so that they weren't necessarily all over the place, but they were able to come together to stay focused on one particular project, as well as tie in whatever content areas that they felt were relative to the project that we worked on as well.
There are 4 activities that I suggest to a teacher when it comes to a kid identifying what they want to do and what they're passionate about. The Blue Sky activity, the 60-second newspaper search, at community asset mapping, and the YMCA Y-Face. I'm going to say those really quickly again. The Blue Sky activity, a 60-second newspaper search. I can't remember what order I went in. Community asset mapping, and the YMCA Y-Face. If you're looking for 4 simple activities that you could give to a group of students for them to address or identify what they might be passionate about, those are 4 tried and true activities that I think work really well.
Just to kind of close up the quality professional development, there was one question about really needing some ideas for the lower grades. And I am going to suggest there's 2 speakers tomorrow, Vicki Lake and Ithel Jones, that are absolutely incredible. They've done a book on early childhood service learning from pre-K to 3rd grade. And they're actually both presenting tomorrow at different times. And they also did a webinar, which is up on the GSN. And so you can, there's...
Starting small, the Teaching Tolerance has a great program called Starting Small, and it's free.
Yeah. And so when we break up into the groups, if that person is still interested, I would highly suggest going with Ginny, because that is her strongest program throughout the service learning, is the younger grades as well. So moving into kind of the institutionalization and sustainability, can everybody kind of answer, what role does service learning play in your organization's missions, visions, or values? How did your organization get to that point? And really, how do you balance the long-term strategic planning, short-term strategic planning, and your everyday role of coaching teachers? Wow. I know, it's quite a bit. I'm just trying to shove it all into one.
I guess I wanted to just say one of the things that I really focus on is I call what I do with teachers and students as service learning experiences, not a project, because I think that gets away from how we connect it to curriculum. So in our efforts to really make this something that can't be cut, because a program can be cut, but an instructional strategy will not be cut. It's just something that teachers have in that proverbial toolbox that we talk about. So I also talk about that this is a strategy for kids to learn how to solve problems. It's not just a project. It is an experience where they learn to look at what's wrong with the world, what needs to be changed, and how can I do that? And I've heard no administrator in our district, and probably none of your districts, that would say, no, we don't need kids to learn how to do that. Kids need to learn how to do that. Shortly, I'm going to be in that wheelchair, and I want those kids that have been going through our district practicing solving problems. Those are the kids that I want to make the decisions that are going to impact me. And I think this is a real world way for students to learn those skills. That's what's resonating in our district. That's one of the, we're hearing about preparing our kids for a global world. Well, this is a strategy that does that. So that's how I'm framing institutionalizing service learning in our district.
I'm going to piggyback that by saying that one of our themes for about 5 years was preparing boys for life. And our strategic plan at our school, because we're a boys' school, so service learning was actually built into our strategic plan because part of that preparation is to help them to become engaged citizens and to work collaboratively with problem solving on a local, national, and global level. So we have, as much as all of our programs grow and we have new programs, we now have a global education coordinator and we have decision education. We've got all these different initiatives and everything, but service learning is always built into them. It's not a it's funny when I go into my boss every year and he tells me I can have my job another year, and I go, really, I can? And he said, you're probably the safest one here, because the students really are engaged. They are active. They are putting their what they're learning into action. And what has happened is, even though it's not 100% everywhere, the evidence of what their experience is not only on our community, but our external community and the global partnerships that the students really have built through service learning, really, they're like ambassadors for the school around the world.
The way that we are talking about institutionalization in the high schools in Cincinnati is through one simple question. If your school does exit interviews for graduating students and or progression interviews, maybe at the sophomore year, a principal or administrator asking a student, what does it mean to be a blank? And in that blank, insert your school mascot. What does it mean to be a Spartan, a Lancer, a Blue Jay, a Bengal, whatever? 9 times out of 10, what we're finding through that simple question is that somehow connection with the community, service learning, or a volunteer experience is inevitably mentioned. And that, for us, is the way that our administrations in our schools are seeing that this is working, because it's what's sticking with kids. And as educators, we can say that it's working, but at the end of the day, really, it's about the students. And I think that's what's helping create this culture of, oh, this is really working. And it's working because our kids are saying it's working. So that's the strategy that we're using. Simple.
Well, we have established a strategic plan for our school district as well, and so in that, we're looking into advancing the number of students that are engaging in service learning throughout the school district, as well as we have board policies that help to support our work, and all of our work comes out of the character development department. And so, in those efforts, it has been one of those top-down pretty much opportunities, and in that opportunity, our superintendent first did listening and learning tours across the school district with major stakeholders to identify what were the needs of our young people. And so once we found out what the community felt was needed for our young people, as well as, you're talking about young people as well being a part of those stakeholders, that's where we've identified that character development was such a needed area, and so that's how it got embedded into our strategic plan. And so with that, we have the support from our superintendent, but with us establishing the high school service learning program where students are able to receive a service learning diploma, our young people have now also been major stakeholders in this, and they are on fire with the opportunities of engaging in service learning throughout our communities. And so honestly, it's very powerful because, again, we have the top-down component support as well as the bottom-up. And so that's really been helpful as we have woven service learning into our K-12 schools. And so with that, it plays a huge part in our mission for our school district, as well as the work that we do throughout with our staff and with our youth as well.
I wanted to also add that our students, we have a board that is in every classroom, and it lists what we call the essential qualities of a Haverford School graduate. And what the students, so they see it every day. And for their senior projects, what the students have to do, they have a 3.5-week period of time. They have to do a project that puts those qualities into action. And they do it with nonprofits. And they do it with, they may be working in a classroom, they may be working with our community-based partners, and there's a variety of ways in which they do it. They can be working in hospitals and so on, but it really is putting what they've learned through service learning into action. And it's pretty powerful at the end of the year, every year, to look at the ways in which that manifests itself from the student's perspective.
I also just wanted to add the additional component on the school level, looking at school improvement plans, which is a way that we evaluate our growth within each school within our district. And so in that school improvement plan is a place for character development and service learning, where there are action steps that are outlined and goals that are outlined. And so with that, every school has an opportunity to outline what that would look like as they move forward. And so I have some examples of that are on the GSN as well. And so this is a particular area that I'll be focusing on once we break out. So I have additional information for you.
And I have a quick question for you, Yvonne. Tell me a little bit more about your service learning diploma.
Okay. So with the service learning diploma, it's an opportunity for young people to be recognized for the work that they've done throughout their high school career. And so we do offer a service learning diploma as well as a service learning exemplary award. And it's structured through what we call our high school service learning program. Students that have achieved at least 250 hours are able to receive a service learning diploma, whereas those who may not have been as much engaged throughout their high school career and have at least 100 hours can receive a service learning exemplary award. And the one thing, again, I really love about our school district is that it's true community support. So one of the things that we do at the end of the school year, in order to really celebrate with the young people for all of their efforts throughout their high school career, is that we host an event called Cool to Serve. And it's an event that is sponsored by business partners, where students that have received, whether it's the service learning diploma or the exemplary award, come out. And we give away like Apple products and things like that. And one of the large gifts is a car. But again, the biggest thing with this event is that it is sponsored by our business partners. And so we really like to recognize youth during this particular time that have shared some impactful projects. And so in that, they're highlighted during this particular ceremony as well. Students that have received the service learning diploma also receive a service learning cord for their regalia for graduation, so they're noted in that way. And the biggest thing that we really like to share with our young people is that as they go off, for those that are interested in going off into college, this is a great opportunity for them to engage in service learning to a level where when they go off to a university or college, that they're able to use the reference of the service learning opportunities. Oftentimes there are many college universities that are really engaged in this as well, and so they're able to be relative to where they're going to afterwards, as well as even just some career purposes as well. So